The restaurant was alive with laughter, conversations, and the soft clinking of glasses, a perfect escape from the cold New York night. In the far corner sat Michael, a man most would overlook, tired eyes, simple clothes, and a quiet demeanor. To strangers, he seemed like just another diner, but behind his weary face was a story of sacrifice. Michael was a single father, raising his little daughter on his own while juggling two exhausting jobs. Once, he had served as a military medic, saving lives under fire, but those days were long behind him. Now, his battles were with unpaid bills, sleepless nights, and the unshakable responsibility of being both father and mother. That evening, he had come only for a modest meal, hoping for a brief moment of peace before returning home. He thought of his daughter's smile, her innocent questions, her dreams he silently promised to protect. The weight of his struggles pressed heavily on him, but he carried it quietly, never complaining, always enduring. To him, this dinner was nothing more than a pause in a life of constant movement. Yet destiny has a way of finding ordinary people in ordinary places. Michael had no idea that within moments, his past training would collide with his present life, pulling him into a situation that would not only test his courage but also reshape his future. On that night, in that corner seat, he was unaware that everything he thought he had left behind was about to matter again. The peace of the evening shattered in an instant. Shouts rang out as three men stormed through the restaurant, their aggression swift and violent. Within seconds, chaos erupted, tables overturned, glasses shattered, and terrified diners scrambled toward the exits. At the center of the mayhem, a well-dressed man was dragged from his chair and thrown to the ground. The attackers rained blows on him, their anger unchecked, while the crowd scattered in panic. Michael froze for a heartbeat, his mind torn between fear and instinct. People rushed past him, desperate to escape, leaving the victim alone, gasping and bleeding on the floor. The man was clearly no ordinary customer, his tailored suit and guarded manner marked him as someone important. Still, in that moment, status meant nothing, he was simply another human being in danger, abandoned by the safety of numbers. Michael's heart pounded. Every survival instinct told him to leave, to protect himself, to return to the daughter waiting for him at home. Yet another part of him, one shaped years ago on battlefields far away, refused to look away. He watched as the attackers fled into the night, their footsteps fading, leaving behind wreckage and a wounded man. Around him, the restaurant fell into stunned silence. The once lively space now echoed with fear and broken glass. Michael realized the choice before him: remain just a bystander, or step into the storm and remember the skills he thought he had buried forever. Michael pushed back his chair and rushed forward, his body moving before his mind could catch up. The man lay on the floor, struggling to breathe, blood staining the white linen napkin scattered around him. People hovered at a distance, whispering, afraid to get involved. Michael's voice cut through the panic, calm, commanding, the voice of a man who had once saved lives under fire. "Someone bring me clean cloths, now," he barked. His hands pressed firmly against the wound, slowing the bleeding. A young waiter, trembling, handed him a tablecloth, which Michael tore into strips with steady precision. He fashioned a makeshift bandage, tightening it with a chopstick as a tourniquet, his movements sharp and certain, as though no time had passed since the days he carried a medic's kit instead of unpaid bills. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Strangers stared, their fear slowly turning into awe as they watched this quiet, ordinary man transform. He checked the man's pulse, lifted his head gently, whispered encouragement, every action radiating confidence and compassion. The victim, barely conscious, locked eyes with him, silently pleading, and Michael answered with steady assurance, "You're not going to die tonight. Stay with me." For the first time since the attack began, the room felt anchored. Amid shattered glass and overturned chairs, hope returned, carried on the shoulders of a single father who had once thought his skills were useless outside of war. In that moment, Michael became the difference between life and death. The wail of approaching sirens filled the air, but inside the restaurant, time seemed suspended. Paramedics rushed in, yet before they could lift the injured man, he reached out weakly and gripped Michael's hand with surprising strength. His eyes, glassy with pain and exhaustion, searched Michael's face. "Why?" the man whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why would you risk yourself, for me? You don't even know me." Michael's throat tightened. For a second, memories of his daughter's laughter flickered in his mind, her small arms around his neck when she was afraid, her innocent questions about why people hurt one another. He swallowed hard, his voice quiet but steady. "Because one day," he said softly, "if my little girl ever needed help, I'd pray that someone wouldn't walk away. Tonight, that someone had to be me." The words hung heavy in the air, striking deeper than anyone expected. Even the paramedics paused for a moment, caught in the raw sincerity of what he'd said. Around them, the restaurant staff and customers stood silently, tears glistening in their eyes, realizing they had just witnessed something greater than courage. It was humanity at its purest. The CEO, fighting through the pain, squeezed Michael's hand one last time before the medics lifted him onto the stretcher. His gaze carried gratitude far beyond words, a promise silently etched into that fleeting moment. For Michael, it wasn't heroism. It was simply being the kind of man his daughter could one day be proud of. A few days later, Michael returned home from another long shift, still carrying the weight of unpaid bills and unanswered worries. As he opened his apartment door, he found his daughter coloring at the small kitchen table, her face lighting up when she saw him. That smile was always his anchor, but tonight, something unexpected awaited him. A knock came at the door. Standing there was the very man he had saved, the CEO, now healed and dressed in a simple suit. His eyes were no longer filled with fear or pain, but with warmth. Behind him stood two associates, holding a briefcase and papers. "I had to find you," the CEO said with quiet conviction. "You didn't just save my life, you reminded me of what really matters. And I can't let a man like you struggle in silence." Michael hesitated, unsure of what to say, but the CEO stepped inside and knelt beside his daughter, smiling gently at her drawings. Then he turned back to Michael. "You gave me a second chance. Let me give one to you, and to her." What followed wasn't just an offer of gratitude, but a life-changing opportunity, a stable career, security for his daughter, and the chance to breathe again without fear of tomorrow. That night, Michael realized his act of courage had come full circle. What began as violence in a restaurant had ended as a story of hope. Sometimes, the smallest act of humanity can open the door to a future brighter than you ever imagined.